The Silly Goose Gang Podcast.
We're in for episode 52 of the Silly Goose Gang Podcast, and we're delighted to be joined this evening by adventurer, nomad, now farm owner, Ness Knight. So Ness, thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening. Thanks for having me, guys. Absolute pleasure.
This was one of those ones where I didn't think we were ever going to start recording there. We'd been talking there for ages. It was one of those like, oh shit, press record quick.
Hang on a sec. We're what, 15 minutes into chatting already?
yeah. It's a pleasure to speak to you, Ness. You're one of the people where when we talk about who we would like to speak to, and just looking through your history, it's like Jesus Christ. Yeah, well, we like insane. So with quite a lot of the guests, where to start, but with you, it's like, where do you start? Like there's so many things. There's so many things that connect together here. That's it's crazy. So there's loads that we need to get into, but
Well, I'm intrigued to give it your best bash of where you want to start. I'm always intrigued where people, their first questions and the first direction that they want to go. So hit me with it.
Okay, how do you? This is me going not where I think you want me to go or expect me to go.
Okay.
How does it work?
I'm prepared.
How do you get local tribes people in Guyana to help you find the source of a river?
Well, okay, that is not done alone, is the answer. So we had an incredible team of people, and that started with the idea, which goes back to Ed Stafford. So the background is Laura and I. Laura Bingham is, well, now Laura Stafford is Ed's wife, and her and I are besties. And she'd been hearing glowing reports from him over the years and years of his original journeys to Guyana back in the day. This was after he had walked the length of the Amazon, and he went back with TV crews to be a support unit for that and setting up the base camps, etc. And he spent quite a bit of time there in Guyana, and he just has these unbelievable tales of recalling looking up into the trees above him, this thick green canopy that stretches out into the horizon, just absolutely gorgeous, with every single species of monkey that you could imagine. And he just painted and waxed lyrical this tale of this wonderland to Laura for years and years. And he did actually have the intention of going back there and doing an expedition at some point. And Laura clocked onto this and thought, wow, bloomin' heck, you haven't done it yet, Ed. Come on, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it. And that's where the idea was born between the two of them. And Laura kickstarted everything. She was the team lead on that, essentially. And it took months and months and months. I think it was close to a year of preparation getting into that. And we got in touch with a guy who has about 20, I think it's 15 or 20 years of experience in Guyana. He's ex-military, and he is one of the fixers on the ground there for numerous film crews who have been out there from the BBC. I mean, the list extends extraordinarily. And so he's, over those years, built up a trust relationship with the indigenous communities out there. And that is crucial, because quite a lot of the time you'll go to places around the world where I've had that really recently in Namibia, where the indigenous communities have been promised so much when people go there, and they've been told they're going to get money, they're going to get exposure for the issues that they have and the voice that they want to have in the world, and all of these promises, and they all fall through. And so many of them will lack a trust and won't let you in, and will just point blank say, no, I'm sorry, this is a closed door on you. And so he allowed us to access the tribe leader, the chief of the YY tribe down in the very southwest of Guyana. And this little village, this tribe indigenous community, is essentially in the middle of nowhere. They are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kilometers away from the nearest village. There are no roads in or out. So there's a little airstrip that, I'm not really sure you can call it an airstrip. It's quite an experience to land there. And he organized pretty much everything for us. And so this is one of the things that I realized after years of doing solo expeditions, where you get used to just having to push through yourself and do the best that you can. And you realize there's a ceiling on that. There's a limit to how far you can go on your own. And that's where the beauty of me stepping into team expeditions with Laura and Pip Stewart. There was the three of us girls who were fronting that. And yeah, all of a sudden doors open, because you your own at, and you other people. And in this case, it was the existing trust that the tribe had for the YY community and chief that allowed us to get in there. And from that point on, yeah, we built a fantastic relationship. That when we arrived there, they were very, very, very prickly, I suppose is the word. They were wary of us. And it took probably a good 2 weeks of being on the river and trekking up river to really build a solid relationship with them. And that was twofold. That was because we were outsiders, and even within Guyana, the YY tribe are marginalized. So it's not just external internationally, it's also internal in their country that they are pushed aside. And when we got there as three females coming into, you've got to realize this, is that it's all well and good coming in saying, well, you know, female power, and we're just going to go in there, we're going to show them we're as strong as them, and we're going to be as great. And the fact of the matter is that you're dealing with hundreds of years of culture and history of them being very traditional in the way that they do things. So it's not that they're anti it, it's that it's a shock to have three women trying to do men's stuff out there, to hack through thick jungle bush, to find the source of a river that's never been documented before, never been found, to hunt, to build each night when we had our camps, to clear the campsite and to build from scratch, from the materials that you find in the forest around you, your campsite and your structures, and, you know, the fires and fishing. I mean, the list goes on of things, and dealing with the tools and making the tools that we use there to hunt. And that was alien to them. And I know this is a long-winded explanation of your question.
No, it's amazing.
Oh, we love it. We love it.
It's amazing, yeah.
Well, but that was the extraordinary beauty of it, was these two worlds coming together. It was an international collaboration. Without them, we would never have survived in that jungle. Point blank. I mean, we were good at what we did, but this is their backyard. Yeah. And so we were having close encounters with jaguar. We started running out of food as we were going. So it was literally subsistence hunting off of what was around us. At one point, we stopped on the side of a river, and the guys just bolted into this thick green wall of jungle, and they disappeared. And a minute later, we just hear screaming as if there's these two tribes at war with one another. What the fuck is going on here? I mean, this was serious business. This wasn't Mickey Mouse Club here. And we were absolutely ghostly, like, what the fuck do we do? I mean, I'm sitting there with my machete, but I'm like still learning how to wield the damn thing. What am I going to do? And yeah, another 5-10 minutes later, they pop back out, and, you know, big grins on their faces. And they basically just had a bit of a war with the jaguar, and the jaguar was hunting an armadillo, and they wanted to steal the jaguar's lunch off of him. And so there was this war, and it's just yelling and screaming, echoing and booming across this jungle. And although they just pop out the other side, you know, like onto the rock with us, and like, yeah, here's lunch, you know, dead armadillo. And yeah, by the way, this was supposed to be a jaguar's lunch. It's now ours. It's just bonkers. And so the skill sets that they taught us were extraordinary. And I really do, it's really important to me that people understand the role that they played in that expedition in making it happen and opening up their worlds. You know, as they slowly, we were absolutely persistent to an annoying point for them, I'd imagine, on learning these skill sets from them. And as I said, you know, they weren't used to the woman going out on these, as it were, hunting or exploratory expeditions with them. And at first they just wouldn't allow us to. They just wouldn't, you know, they would tell us, stand back, we're doing camp. You just go stand there. You're not going to hunt with us. You're going to watch us hunt. And that's because it was their job within their community and their society to be those winners of the food. to bring that back home, and we had to respect that. And I think that through a drawn out long mutual respect of slowly learning to understand each other, we came to a point where they turned around one day, and I remember, this is my personal experience, obviously Laura and Pip had their own individual experiences with them that they'll speak to you about. Hopefully you can get them on your podcast. But they turned around to me one day, and it was probably one of the moments I'll remember for the rest of my life with absolute clarity. And they said, "You have just become our very first female warrior."
Wow.
And that was,
wow.
I know it's hard to relate, but the emotion that goes behind that, to understand, the barriers, the alienness in each other's worlds, to overcome all of that, and, the courage for them to allow us and, to just step into that world and to teach us was incredible. And it's one of those I would encourage anyone to, if you're wanting time out, to go and explore and do an expedition and spend time with Indigenous communities, because it's incredibly humbling, and when you have an experience like that, it transforms your life from there forward.
Yeah. When you speak to I have to use the word normal. So if you speak to normal people, do they have any? Do they have any? I've done quite a lot of Munros in Scotland and stuff. So I have an idea of the wilderness and all this kind of stuff. But there is people out there who, only watch reality TV and drive the BMW. When you speak to any of these kind of normal people, do they have any idea how far they are removed from that life, or do they just not? Does it not compute in their head? How far they are from that?
Can I hold you 1 second? I see that my light is about to die. It's flickering in the background.
Yeah,
so
are
we able to cut and paste?
Yeah, I can paste it. I can cut and paste it and edit, and it's cool. We'll keep it recording, and I can cut it out.
1 second.
Don't worry. What are you drinking?
It's a little beer from Pit and Weem. A little local. I'm at the age now. This can get cut out. I'm at the age now where I'm drinking craft beers. One of those wankers now. That's like, I can really taste the flavors in this one.
The hoppy, salty.
I'm at that age now. It's a local craft beer, and I'm cooler than you because you don't know what it is. I'm one of those guys now.
It's called I think it's called Fisher. I bet it's called Fisherman's Jaggy Jaw or something like that.
It was actually named. It's actually quite cool. It was actually named. I think they have 3 different beers, and they're named after all different ships. I think pirate ships from the Fife, the Fourth, the Fifth of Fife, because that's where roundabout there's where the actual Robinson Crusoe's from. That's Pit and Weem, isn't it?
No, but it's another one that Robinson Crusoe was based on. Yeah, Andrew Selkirk spent time in Pit and Weem.
Yeah, that's right.
Alexander Selkirk.
We're just talking amongst ourselves here, Ness. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. I can relate. All craft beer and age thing. It happens, male and female alike.
Yeah, I'm at that age. So sorry. Yeah, I can't remember what did I say?
We were asking about normal people in BMWs and how they relate.
Yeah. So if you're speaking to like I say normal people, because not everybody goes off adventuring to the far depths of the world. If you're speaking to any of these people and their biggest concern is that maybe there's no makeup left, and they don't know what BMW to buy next, and do they have any concept of what you're doing?
Wow. Okay. I've been asked this question many times. Asked it.
Okay.
It makes me think. Yes, because I think that in the last 10 to 15 years, we've had some level of exposure through documentaries that have given people beautiful insight into that kind of world of exploration. And I think that especially with the advent of social media, that's become quite a prominent thing in people's lives, is living almost vicariously through others. And that doesn't just go for exploration, it goes for any industry, it goes for any type of person. For me, I'm now living vicariously through farmers because that's an interest of mine now. So yes and no. I won't lie to you. When all of us come back from expedition, it's the age-old thing, bog standard, is that there's an adjustment period. because you go from living very closely with nature. You go from a very simple life where it's you step back in time. You really do. And it's a rare thing in modern society to be able to flex those muscles of survival, of going back to our core fundamental capabilities as a human being, as a species, where you're not at the top of the food chain, but you're somewhere in the middle, you know, and you're vulnerable. And to and then a city and be faced with people talking about the most, I hate to say the word, but you know, it's almost the mundane things. That, you know, like, really, are you worried about that nail polish, or are you worried about, you know, whether your tires are that sparkly or not on the next person's more? I mean, it's hard. I won't lie to you, because it's apples and oranges. I don't think you can sit here and compare those two worlds at all, because, and neither is better or worse than the other. That's the one thing I will say about that, because once I've adjusted after a few weeks, I'm in that world too, because that is reality. And that is the challenges that we face nowadays are in completely different ways as challenging as the challenges of survival back in that day, in that simplistic, you know, realm of survival of the fittest. They're just different. And so, yeah, I do find it really hard sometimes to, you know, go to a dinner party or, you know, one of these cocktail, you know, events in London, or just even to my family. And I'm full of these stories of stealing a Jaguar's lunch off them and falling asleep at night and, you know, feeling this brush of a tail beneath me and looking to the side and Jaguars walking off, and waking up at 4 a.m. and my alarm clock is howler monkeys. I mean, it's so different, you know. And sometimes that goes down like a lead balloon in a way, because it is just too far-fetched for the realities of what people are facing right now, which is very realistic challenges, which is not. And I slip back into that too, because that is life. And so, yeah, it's a weird world. And I think what fascinates me the most, and part of the reason why I continue to do that and go on these expeditions and be fascinated by that world and survival, is because I love storytelling. You know, and why do we watch movies? Why do we read books? It's because we love that escape into this fantasy world of stuff that is just so far from our worries that we're in right now. So from that side of things, I often find people absolutely don't have a problem with understanding my world, because they need it.
Yeah, definitely.
And
do you
they can't be on it doesn't mean that they don't need it.
Totally. Have you ever been surprised when you come back? And this relates to something I've thought for a while, and something I saw years back, which I can go into. But are you ever surprised at how rude people are when you come back from being in the jungle, being with the, you know, the indigenous people, and then suddenly, as you say, you're in London and it's the hustle and bustle, and because there's that disconnect of, you know, what's London got, 7 million people or something, as opposed to the tribe of 150 people, for argument's sake. There's that massive disconnect, and people have that tendency to be massively rude in cities. Does that ever come as a shock, or have you noticed that when you've came back at all?
I think I wouldn't label it rude. I would label it there can be an abruptness, but I would label that as stress.
That's super interesting, because I've never thought of it that way. And this is something that I've said so many times before. You know, when I'm in Edinburgh or you know, Glasgow for work, I would always say rude. And even just when, you know, I went up in the summertime there, I'd never been up Arthur's Seat in Edinburgh, you know, the old volcanic rock, and nobody said hello, absolutely nobody. And then you go to, you know, the next week, I was, you know, 2 weeks later, I was in Isle Skye, and everybody says, hello, how you doing? Where are you from? And all this kind of stuff. But I've never thought about it in the sense that people may just be stressed out because they're going to a job that they hate, and you know, maybe their kids have been assholes and got kicked out of school, and they're struggling with payments on mortgages and things. I've never thought about it that way before.
Well, look, we were evolved for I mean, 200,000 years in terms of going back to, for example, the Sand Bushmen and their civilization, and, you know, like in really understanding that far back. And we look at life being incredibly simple, and not, I don't mean simple in a bad way. It was incredibly difficult, but we've introduced technology and we've introduced machinery and we've introduced economy on a scale that is unprecedented, and a population, global population, that is just bursting at the seams. And this is something so new and so alien to the human species, to our race. I mean, it's just phenomenal. And so what I've found, which is, and this is why I get frustrated, but I respect the fact that people can be abrupt when I come back. Because we're dealing with population numbers that are far beyond the, you know, 50 or 100 and 150 people in a very small community in the middle of nowhere who are very tight knit. You know, it's complete, you can't compare that.
Yeah.
But also the stresses that I see is when I go into these indigenous communities, into these tribes, it's the stress levels, it's acute stress, not chronic stress. So for example, when you're on a hunt, your adrenaline goes high. And this is food or no food. This is eating or not, starving or thriving. And adrenaline is high. And for that moment, or when a jaguar comes into your camp, or if you know, you're faced with, you know, you've in the African wilderness, and suddenly you come around the bend and you've got a bull elephant in front of you, and it's you and nothing else. And this thing is pretty pissed off with you. That is acute stress that you deal with in that moment. It's very high stress levels and very high adrenaline, and then it's done, and that fades away, and you go back to, you know, the daily grind and the routine of doing what you do. And what I found is coming back here, suddenly, you know, that fit well with, I could feel my stress levels easing away, that in a way that I'd never felt before. It felt natural. It felt very, very normal and natural. And then you come back into our modern society, and I've got my mobile phone that every single time it pings, I've got this, albeit it's not the kind of adrenaline rush that I'd have when I'm face to face with, you know, a bull elephant. It's a stressor that goes, and then it pings again and it pings again, and I've got this, you know, adrenaline rushing, and, you know, your phone's ringing and this is happening and the bills are coming through, and you open your mail and it's not what you want, and you've got to do this and that event and go to this place, and you know, your kids are, you know, not doing what you want, and you've got to get them out. It's just, there's just so many things happening that we're absolutely overwhelmed. And so that stress that should just be a spike and then a decrease and dissipate is a lower level but consistent throughout our days, every day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Unless we get the rare holiday that we go off and we actually put our phone down and don't work remotely, which is very rare these days. And I think that is what is kind of pushing people to the limit these days. And it's testing us, you know, it's testing human beings in a way that we've never been tested before. And we're in a realm that we don't yet understand fully. And we're, you know, we're putting our body up against the chemicals on a level of consistency of being higher that we've never experienced before. And I think that's an interesting space, you know, the physiology and the psychology that comes with that. And when you start looking at chronic disease and what stress does to you. And so I know this, sorry, I do go off on tangents, so bear with me.
No, it's great. I love it.
Right? Is that, yeah, I come back and it frustrates me, but I respect it when I come across that abruptness, because it's hard. It is hard. It's a different kind of hard, but it's hard.
Yeah. Do you find, one of the things that I find is that you can't sort of worry about what everybody's doing. All you can do is do your best and be kind to everybody and try and be the best person you could be. No, it's not. Yeah. I just find if you're nice to people, one of the things that I started doing maybe last year was every time you had dealt with somebody, you know, whether it was in a petrol station or a shop or you know, whatever it was, it's just saying, have a nice day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's one of these things where sometimes people look at you like, oh, thank you. And it's just those small things where, they might walk away going, what a nice guy. Obviously, they don't know me, but you know, they might say, you know, what a nice guy. And it's these little things where I think if everybody does these little things and it helps lift every, you know, I love the saying, you know, a rising tide lifts all ships. I love that saying.
Yeah.
And if everybody just put out these, I mean, I don't want to sound like a hippie and say, you know, positive vibes, but if everybody was just nicer,
You sound
but, you know,
it.
I don't want to be a hipster drinking craft beer saying, you know, positive vibes. But, you know, namaste. But you know, I just feel like everybody just did their own little bit.
Yeah.
We could all be nicer to everybody else, and just help everybody, because you know, everybody's going through these same things. You know, almost everybody. So yeah, I just feel like, you know, everybody could play their own little, and it just so that one of the another one of my favourite little sayings is you know, Scott Hutchison, who's no longer with us, was you know, the lead singer of Frightened Rabbit, or a Scottish band. I heard a song, and it's like a little phrase that they've got now. It's just make tiny changes. Like, while I'm alive, I'll make tiny changes to Earth, and it's such a brilliant phrase of just these tiny little things that you could do to everybody around about you. You know, it's you don't have to, you know, Ness Knight does not have to get rid of plastics from all around the world. But if you do your own little bit, you know, doing your own little bit on your nice new farm, you can influence people around about you, and then they make a difference. And it's just one of these things where, you know, you go, you know, everybody can do these things. Sorry, now I'm going off on a tangent. Sorry.
I could not agree more. I bang the drum for this. Is that, you know, there's two things here. One is that I don't think anyone should ever, and I sounds like really cheesy and, you know, but the catalyst that just a few words can have in someone's life, never underestimate that, because I've heard stories that, you know, people have been on the brink of suicide, that a kind word from a stranger, just in passing, has completely taken them back from the edge of that cliff. And you just can't underestimate that. And I think the other thing for me that I found, and especially in the work that I've done now, and what in a way propels me forward in my career for the rest of my life with great passion and enthusiasm, is that ripple effect. And it's easy to disregard it, is that, you know, you pop a little stone in the middle of a pond and it has a few little ripples that go out, but what you don't understand is that will affect people around you. Well, they'll be changed and affect people around them, and that goes on indefinitely. Literally, it goes on indefinitely. And when you see the expansion of that and the trajectory of that, it's not to be underestimated. So I know it sounds really hippie, but it's absolutely, and you see that when you travel around the world, and you see that when you broaden your horizons and go and see these communities, is that, I mean, I've just earlier this year, as I said, I've been out to the San Bushmen in northeast Namibia, in the Nainai region, and their entire civilization. Now, bear in mind, this is the oldest civilization on the planet. So they've done something right, because if you think about how many civilizations have come and been at a peak and crashed and burned and turned to ashes and dust, and these guys are still there, and they still hold the same ethos, the same values. They're still going strong. They're still going. And everything that they ride on within that community is about kindness to one another, of understanding. And when they go out and hunt, they come back and there is no ego whatsoever. There's no hierarchy, interestingly enough, absolutely no hierarchy. And everything is shared. And that's where peace comes. You know, when I went out there, I was chatting to some guys who had been there for a very long time, and, you know, had stories from the original folk who had you know, gone up and explored and found the Sand Bushmen. And the story goes that one chap, I think he was British, he went out there, I think probably around the 1960s, and he asked them if they'd ever had a war. And they said to him, well, what is war? And he explained to them, you know, when two people or two worlds or two tribes or countries fight one another and have a battle, and people die and they fight, and then there's a winner at the end of it, you know, or when they have an argument and you know, they disagree on politics or whatever it may be, and they fight. And they said, oh, well, yeah, you know, I suppose we've had one. And he was like, well, tell me about this war. And they said, well, there were these two brothers, and somebody from the outside brought a pot, and the one brother wanted to keep the pot, but it was supposed to be going to the other brother, and then that was going to be shared around the community. And they had an argument, and then they resolved it. And so, yeah, I guess we have had a war. And it's just the perspective that you start getting from that. It's like, wow, and that every bit of their success as a civilization for 200,000 years rise off the back of being kind and being collaborative and in a community and lifting people.
Isn't it hilarious? Isn't it hilarious that if you take the concept of war and break it down to like dumb it down to like the lowest level and explain it to somebody who doesn't understand what war is, they're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Exactly.
So essentially, two people disagree with each other, and then you'll spend billions of pounds to kill each other, but you don't kill the two people that are arguing. You kill everybody else around
kill by proxy. Kill by proxy.
Like, if you explain that to somebody, you just be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why would you do that?
I know, you put a mirror up to society that we're in and go, oh, shit.
Yeah.
So we really got it wrong, didn't we?
When you dumb it down to that level, you think, that's idiotic. Why would anybody do that?
I think one of the things as well that's causing an issue, and again, this is a slight tangent, but for as much as we probably communicate more than ever, as you were saying, Ness, with your phone continually pinging, social media, emails, text messages, all the rest of it, Skype, Zoom calls. People have forgotten how to actually talk and communicate, though, if that makes sense. Because that's one of the things you said, Chris, wasn't it? Like, from doing these podcasts, we both became better at speaking, but most importantly as well, listening. Because a lot of people will just wait on their turn to speak, rather than actually listening to what's being said. And I find that's changed massively.
Yeah, 100%.
With everything that's been going on as well. And I think that's definitely had an impact on that stress level compared to before.
It's really interesting. I couldn't agree more. And it's this funny old thing. I've thought long and hard when on my expeditions about this. And it's a catch-22, is that we found ourselves so drowned in the noise of social media, of work, of emails, of TV, of all of the stuff. And it's, as I said, it's unprecedented in, the history of human beings. And it's a catch-22 because in amongst this noise, there's a natural human instinct, because we are communal creatures. We are from communities. We are social, and we have a need to be heard. And to be heard, you have to shout. And so you get caught up in this, like, hear me, hear me, hear me, hear me. And you forget to listen. And, you're one of those people that aren't listening when you want other people to listen to you. And it's just this perpetual cycle of people wanting to be heard, but not listening.
Yeah.
And it's scary, actually. I that's part of the reason that I'm just so absolutely ecstatic to be setting down a few roots with my man, Jake, and getting our farm going and building a community around that, is because I've understood the absolute enormous value in that, in terms of just well-being.
Yeah.
People as well, along with that. Yeah.
I feel like we should get some like whale music on and just start like, a little group meditation thing going in here.
We bit of Enya in the background, a bit of Enya Sail Away or something. But along with that noise, though, people is, and again, I've been guilty of it as anyone, but you get caught a lot of the time in that echo chamber as well within social media, of just, throwing out the noise, and it comes back to you as positive, because it's feeding back, whether you're for it or against it, it'll either feedback stuff that you agree with and you'll respond to it accordingly, or it'll see something that's the polar opposite to what you believe, and it forces you to react to it with, as you were saying, Ness, that spike of adrenaline of, I can't believe someone's posted that. That's, I'm gonna angrily comment alongside that. Or you see one where you go, oh yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm gonna like that. I'm gonna reshare it. Yeah. People get caught in that whole mix up.
Totally. And I just think that it's really simple. Is we're all prone to it. I'm prone to it. It doesn't matter how much I've traveled. I'm not immune to that at all. I'm a human being. We all are human beings. And I think it's just a case of becoming a little bit more mastered over the years through time and effort and consciousness about this issue, of choosing your filters of what you want to take and what you don't. And I think that it's really important that we understand that the social media and the world that we're in and the amount of information that we're exposed to and opinions and insights into stuff that we'd never, ever previously have had any inkling about. That's really important. That's hugely important. And I think that it's just a case of we have to become better because we're in such infancy and early stages of, this online world.
Yeah, well,
we have to give ourselves a break because it's quite hard to learn and go through that teething period of understanding how to manage it.
Well, I was just going to say there, we are all, Ali's a little bit older, but we're all round about the same ages. I think we are probably the last generation of people who really remember growing up without the internet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we're probably the last.
For that, my goodness.
Yeah, totally. Like my boys, I've got 3 kids, Ness, but my 2 boys are about to turn 18 and 17. They can't remember it. I have an 11-year-old daughter. She doesn't even remember not being able to pause live TV, which still freaks me out a little bit.
Yeah.
I remember
when you put it like that, and I think my childhood was just completely free of all of that. And no, I am grateful for that. I do agree.
Yeah. I remember the first time. I absolutely remember being about 13, maybe 13-ish, and we had a computer, a big old computer, and it was dial up. And I can remember getting on. It was like the dial up, and it was like, oh, I'm on the internet. Like, what do I look at? I had no idea what to look at. I was just like, I'm on the internet. This is amazing. Do you know what I mean? And it was like,
I'll never forget that dial-up tone. Never.
No.
That's great.
Yeah, but what was how was it in? So where about in South Africa were you from originally?
So contrary to what you'd imagine, because of the career that I've had for the last 10 years, I grew up in Johannesburg, which is a concrete city. It's got enormous character. Sometimes for the better. The music and the creative scene there is phenomenal. There's culture that blows your mind, but at the same time, it's raw, it's edgy. It's a world where there's a lot of violence and where you are you're exposed, very exposed, and that's because you have this polarized world of the very poor and the very rich, and there's very little in between of that. I grew up in Johannesburg and hugely grateful for that. I think that was a very formative experience to grow up amongst that, and also quite humbling. But I was on the doorstep of the big wild wilderness of Africa, and that was holidays, and so we used to head out and escape, the concrete city and jungle to the big plains of African savannas and the wildlife and the lions and the elephant and the rhino, and it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And I think that is where unconsciously the seeds were planted for where I'm at today.
Yeah, it's been not a bad place. No, but if you think about being in Africa, all the things that they're there to see. And one of actually this again, we're going off on a little tangent here. One of the coolest things I ever heard was I love Henry Rollins. He was the punk man Black Flag, and he's been in some movies and stuff. Sons of Anarchy. When he was in a band, he was telling the story, and he said, a reporter said, you must have seen a lot of the world. And he said, well, yeah, Australia, Japan, Europe. And then he's like, why have I never been to Africa? So then Henry Rollins tells all these fantastic stories of just booking a trip to, I can't even remember where he started. And he just started working across Africa and met sort of tribal leaders, and they took him to like a local music festival, and how unbelievable it was. And it's just one of these things you're like, fuck, this sounds so cool. I really wish I had the bottle to go, I'm just going to go and, cycle across Bolivia. That's just, I wish I had that in me. I don't, I like an adventure into the Highlands, but not to that extreme.
Or cycle across the northern Namib Desert like Ness Knight did.
Yeah.
Oh, that was great fun.
So where did that come from?
Yeah, that was a really straightforward one. But yeah, once you step foot on there, that dirt, that red dirt, is in your blood, and you'll never, it'll be in your heart forever. Africa's got this special thing. Of any continent I've been to, Africa's just got this magical, ancient, special spell that it puts. But yeah, the Namib Desert, Namibia, goodness. I cycled solo. It was the first ever cycle from northern border with Angola down to Swakopmund. And that was bordering the world's most ancient desert, the oldest desert in the world. And so really, really spectacular, and as I said, very ancient part of the world. And that came about through, I was incredibly lucky, actually. I went and did a talk in London at I think it was in January. There's the it's an adventure festival. I forget the name of it now, but a good few years back I did a talk there, and in the audience was some folk from Red Bull who had a little bit of money in the kitty and some ideas of, expanding Red Bull into the world of exploration rather than just adrenaline sports. And I was speaking about fear at the time, and how you deal with that and overcome it, and the importance of fear actually in life, and that it serves a purpose. And they approached me afterwards and said, listen, we loved your chat about fear, and we just wanted to say to you, if we gave you the budget, where in the world would you go? Anywhere. Like, here's an atlas, point where you would want to go and why and what you would do there. And it was a no-brainer for me. I grew up in South Africa, and I'd never been to Namibia, and that was, a bordering country, and I'd just heard spectacular things about it. It's really, it's otherworldly. It's quite a strange place. It's very low population there, so wilderness is just sprawling and spread out. I mean, it's a place where you connect with wildlife, and I just didn't know very much about it. And so, yeah, I said, this is the place. And you know what? I've never been on a fat bike. And what I tended to do in the early years of my career was try and find a discipline to do that lent itself to the place that I wanted to go. So, whether that was kayaking or swimming or walking, mountaineering. In this case, it was desert, and it was arid and dry, rocky, and unknown, completely unknown. There was very little that anybody could tell me about the regions that I wanted to go to. And the only thing I could think of was, well, if a fat bike can go on snow and deal with that wide footprint, like an elephant's footprint, and you can just, let out some of the gas, and you can go over pretty much any terrain imaginable, then heck, that's what I'm going to do. And they said, yeah, we're in. Hell, this fits the bill. And the idea was born, and off I went.
That would be one of the coolest things in the world. If Red Bull came and said, "Eddie, there's a budget. Where would you go?" That would be like, fuck yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
A memo that made my year. I mean, come on. Anyone coming up to you saying, "Hey, I got some money. Where do you want to go?"
Oh yeah.
Your own expedition, like freaking heck, I'm in.
Yeah. How do you stay? Having done some cycling and things like that, how do you stay in shape to do that stuff year round? To be able to jump on a bike at, because if somebody said to you, you have to cycle 1,000 miles, in 3 months' time, that you have to be in a fairly, good physical state just to be able to think about doing that in 3 months' time. So what do you do?
You should.
Should be okay. You just learn on the go.
But if you might lag on some of it. Yeah. I've had times where I've prepared for expeditions where I've known what's up ahead, and the sensible thing to do is to be incredibly prepared. This time round, I was very human, and I was not, I won't lie, as most of my fitness I accumulated along the way. And I think this was off the back of a few years earlier, having done a solo cycle across America. And just prior to that expedition, I had stand-up paddleboarded 1,000 miles down the Missouri River.
As you do.
I'd seen that.
And I built up this upper body of a rugby player. I mean, it was phenomenal. I was enormous. I'd literally doubled in size in my upper body, but I had these piddly little legs, because half the time I was kneeling on the board. I didn't really need to use my lower body that much. I should have, but I didn't. And I just decided that I wasn't done yet. I didn't want to go home. I wanted to cycle across America, and I just got on a bike, and the first week was hell. Absolute hell on earth. I've never felt pain like it before or since. And I realized that it literally only took me 7 days for my body to, yes, go through probably being prone to an enormous amount of injury, which is not clever. So, kids at home.
Kids that are listening, don't try this.
I'm not condoning that, but it's what I did. And I realized how our bodies are unbelievably able to adapt very, very, very quickly. Situations, and within 7 days I was fit as a fiddle. My lower body was transforming before my eyes. I was growing muscles at a rate of every single day. I'd wake up and go, oh my gosh, like, where did that come from? That wasn't there yesterday. And so I think I just went into the Namibia expedition on the fat bike a little bit lackadaisical, a little bit kind of cocky and overconfident, and thinking, well, it'll be fine. I'll do okay. It's not a problem. It's not that far. Yeah. And I went through hell on earth again. Not only because of the physical adapting to the environment, of bicycle, but I was in 49-50 degrees Celsius heat, and I had planned on there, I was banking on there being these water sources all along the way, because I'd looked at Google aerial maps, and I thought it was all clever about that, and I'd be like, oh well, there's a water source, and there's a river, and there's this and there's that. And if you're planning on anything like this, do get in touch with local people, and don't be too cocky, but go and ask them what the climate is doing for the last few years, because things are changing big time. And Namibia had been in the grip of a 4-year-long drought, which meant that all of my water sources were dried up. So I ended up having to make a last-minute kind of hashed plan with some of the crew to put some water caches along the way. But I wanted to try and do it as naturally as possible. So that pushed me to my physical limit of being completely dehydrated, absolutely exhausted, sleep deprived, dealing with heat exposure that was just off the charts. And it just didn't go down very well. And I ended up in a situation where I think it was about halfway down. I'd been through the total wilderness where there was no people, no wildlife, no nothing. It was too arid and too desolate. And I'd finally got to these oases and water sources. And by that time, although I had the water sources and the food resources around me, what I didn't have was anything left in the tank. And I'd been battered and bruised by the environment. And I ended up coming, 200 meters from a fresh lion kill and lost consciousness. Bloody stupid thing to do. I was in the middle of lion territory. I mean, it was ridiculous. And so, I guess, your body can adapt and can do these things, but pick and choose where and when you decide not to, do the right training. Because training
one of the,
to another level.
Yeah. That's one of those interesting things where you say when the tank's empty. This is a thing that I explain to people. So I failed last year the Keltman Triathlon. It's an extreme iron distance. So I failed that. And I remember saying to people, I'd made a few mistakes, and the tank was empty. And I remember being on the road, and it was I got off my bike, and I remember phoning the crew and saying, "Come and give me some food or something." And there was a lay-by 50 meters in front of me, and I couldn't make it. I just lay on the grass and starfish. I went, "That's it. I'm not going any further." And people go, "You couldn't make 50 meters." You go, "No, when you're not just like, I'm a little bit tired." Yeah. No, it's like I can't keep moving these pedals. Like, it's a bizarre feeling. Yeah. That, and also it's quite funny when you talk about the 40, 50 degrees. I did Mont Blanc marathon, and I think it would be 35 degrees when I did that. And obviously being from Scotland, we're not used to that. And I
You're
had
not quite acclimatized for that, are you?
no, I didn't take anything like enough water. I remember running down a hill to a checkpoint, and I thought my ACL had snapped, and everything had cramped up so much, and I didn't take any salts with me. Luckily, somebody gave me some food, and I kind of hobbled my way back down to a checkpoint. But like, I don't think people could understand how. I mean, like that's 35. That's 15. Degrees below what you were in. That is insane. Like absolutely insane.
It's exhausting. And I imagine what you had, which was something over what I had. I had a dry heat, which in a funny way is a little bit easier. It's deceiving. You think that you're okay because there's this dryness to it. You're not in this humidity that's suffocating. And that's dangerous. But what you would have had was just this complete overwhelming, compared to what I had in the desert. And that has an effect. That really does hit you.
Really struggled. I've never. I was all been, one of those people whenever on holiday going, yeah, the heat doesn't bother me. I'm not worried about the heat. And I, doing that, I was like, holy shit, like staggering into trees and having to hold on to trees. And I remember just sitting. There's a couple of little streams going through people's like back garden and just sitting in them, just to get my bum wet because it felt like it was relieving everything. It was horrible.
It's real, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And the difference is, that wasn't really desperate. I was only ever really probably a mile from somebody's house at any one point. You're in the middle of literally nowhere.
Yeah.
Way hotter.
Yeah.
And there isn't anybody there.
No.
There's nobody there. There's nobody there.
Yeah. And did I hear you say, Ness, on, and I'm sure it was on Jason Fox's Wild Tales podcast I listened to you, and one of your crew said when you're on the bike you do look a little bit like an antelope when you're going through lion country.
Yeah, no, so basically that's absolutely true. I was going through what they call lion country, lion territory. So the first third of my journey from the border with Angola down south, because of the climate change that had happened and the drought that had happened, all the nomadic Himba communities that had lived up there, all of the wildlife, the desert elephants, everything, the desert lions had moved south. So there was nothing. And then you suddenly hit these oases and this lush, beautiful region, and the lions are jam packed. I mean, like shoulder to shoulder flipping. You cannot turn a corner without being, what am I going to come across here? And so and it's also conservation region. And so legally I have to have what they call a lion warden, which sounds quite bizarre, but it's basically one of the guys running one of the big conservation parks there, one of the main wardens there, and he would be in his Land Rover driving, 5K, a few K ahead, sometimes 10K, and he would be on radio when he was within reach for me, and he would just let me know, look, there have been lions crossing your path here, or we've seen them, we've had a sighting of them in this region, which is quite close to where you're going through the canyons, just be aware of that. And he'd try and kind of safeguard me by feeding back information. And what he did say to me the morning that we set off for this, where I was shitting myself, to be honest with you. I grew up in Africa, but I mean, on your own out there, and the film crew would only meet me at certain points, strategic points. So I was on my own for 90% of the time. And he said, yeah, I'm sorry, Ness, but I do have to be blunt with you. Just, the reality of this is that you're on a bicycle, and to a lion, you look like a big, juicy, tasty antelope. So we'll stay in contact, and I'll let you know when they've crossed your path, but just stay calm. And I was like, what do you mean? How the fuck do you stay calm if you come face to face with a pack of lions? And he said, he gave me this funny story, actually, and it's best told if there's a way for people to watch a video of this, that would be good. Are you guys doing this on YouTube?
Oh, we put it on YouTube as well. Yeah.
Okay, so if you're listening to this on the podcast at this point, transfer, go over, watch the YouTube bit, but
subscribe while you're there.
Yeah, he had this little glint in his eye, and he thought it was quite humorous, and I mean, he's been in the African bush for 40 odd years. I mean, it's nothing to him, it's just all amusing stories. And if you get mauled by a lion, it's just another story to tell in the catalogue, right? So didn't plan on having that happen to me, though. And he said, look, I said, what Fritz, what the hell do I do if I come across a pack of lions? And he said, well, yeah, that would be interesting. So what you do is, you'll be face to face with them. They'll be X number of meters ahead of you, and you just stand still for a moment. And they're going to try and want to intimidate you. They're curious, they might want to come forward a little bit and kind of, they might be hungry, they might not. You don't know. If they're not hungry, they're curious. If they're hungry, you're in the shit. Good luck. But hopefully they're just curious, and they'll take a few steps forward, and they'll kind of give you this look. And at that point, I want you to take a big step to your left and a big step backwards, and stay very, very still. Look very confident. Look them in the eye. Don't look scared. Don't look away. Then they're going to get even more curious, and they want to come forward. Maybe they're a little bit hungry, and they're going to come, you're going to be feeling the hairs on the back of your neck, and you're going to be feeling like this is the end of your days, and, good luck to that. And I want you to take a big step to your right and then a big step back. And this is going to go on a few times until the point that they lose interest in you, or they get really hungry and they go for you. And if you're lucky enough that they lose interest in you, that ahead of you, you're going to look ahead and just see a trail of shit. So you're going to shit yourself. So that's why you take a big step to the left, big step back. You shit yourself. You take a big step to the right, big step back. So you avoid stepping in your own shit and falling on your ass. And you take a big step. So, oh God, okay. You're really not instilling confidence in me. This is not going down well. I'm afraid. I'm literally frayed at the edges. I'm dehydrated. I'm about to fall over. Fuck you. Yeah, no, it's funny, like you get these old leathered, battered and bruised old guys that have been, in the African sun for their entire lives, and they just love it when you get this, very British white skins turning pink in the sunshine, and peeling away, and you just like, you're shitting yourself, and they love it, and they play off of it, and they got this glint in their eye, and yeah. But luckily enough, I mean, when I did lose consciousness, he actually, something told him to turn around and come back in his Land Rover, and he found me wandering around completely off my, out of my mind. Just yeah. I don't know if you've got experienced that when you push yourself to the limit and you start hallucinating, and then past the hallucinations, you get to the point where you actually have this out of body experience where you watch yourself from above, and that's a scary place to be. And that's what happened just before losing consciousness. And you're not present in your physical body, and then you pass out and you wake up and they tell you that you were off, like 100 meters in that direction, walking towards the lions. Oh, fucking hell.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think when people start telling you what to do if you're approached by lions, that's when you go, I'm out.
But I can't, because
get helicopter.
Hey, where in the world do you want to go? We got this boatload of money. What do you want to do? And I was like, well, I picked it, right?
Yeah.
If the boat's that, if the boatload of money is that big enough, and they don't have somebody to protect you from lions 24/7, get a bigger fucking boat.
Oh wow! I had to bruise and scrape my knees, didn't I? I had to get a little bit of credibility by going through the shit and making mistakes. But yeah, you get humbled by your own mistakes, don't you?
Yeah, certainly. That's the thing. One thing that me and Chris have both done, and it's something that you've done in a similar vein, is we regularly, and have done, swam in the Firth of Forth.
Ooh, chilly.
Yes.
Really chilly. And a bit wild, no?
It can be at times. And we've swam, both me and Chris have swam out like lochs in Scotland, up the north coast, like wherever.
Yeah.
Especially I used to surf back when I was younger as well, so you get used to it. But you swam pretty much the entire length of the Thames.
Oh yeah.
Which might not be quite as cold, but I would imagine at times that must have been, to quote a Scottish word, absolutely fucking mock it.
Disgusting, essentially.
Disgusting and dirty.
So I would say if somebody said to me they were going to swim in like the Thames, I would say, yeah, don't get any of that in your mouth.
No,
that's not going to end well.
Okay, well, yes, on both counts. It's what is it? Mocha?
Mockit. MAWKIT is probably how to spell it. Mockit.
Mockit. Okay, it was definitely that, and definitely yes. Don't put it in your mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, look, the temperatures wouldn't have been anything like what you guys have done up in the north of Scotland and northeast of Scotland there. But it was cold enough that I was in a wetsuit, 3 mil. And I guess the problem was when you're doing 10 hours a day every single day, that gets to you. And now I've got something called Raynaud's disease, which means that my body overreacts really early on to thinking that it should go into hypothermia, that it needs to protect me even at mild temperatures. So I'm not really designed for cold weather, and that strips all the blood from my fingertips and my extremities. And so I really felt it. I mean, pathetically so. But yeah, day after day, that did get the better of me. And I guess the biggest thing with that journey, that swim, was the isolation, because you've got goggles on and it's brown, murky water. You can't see shit all. You can't hear anything. You've got earplugs in your ears. You can't speak to anyone because your face is in the water the entire day. And you start going into place for 10 hours straight every single day with your own thoughts. And that's an interesting place to go to. So that was something to get used to. But yeah, there was, I think it was around Marlow, that I remember a few locks before that. One of the gatekeepers, the lock keepers there, had said to me, "Oh yeah, no, just a heads up that we've tried to get this in the press for many years, and it has been in the press, but nobody's done anything about it. But when you get down near Marlow, correct me, I might be wrong about this. I'm pretty sure it was around Marlow, but there's a pump station. It's ancient. It's really, really, really old, and it's cracked and it's broken and it needs repairs. And they've literally got tape into the River Thames, like it's sectioned off a bit of the River Thames on the side there, and shit is leaking into the Thames River. And nobody wants to they don't want to take responsibility for it. They're trying to hide it from the press and the media. It's been, even when it was in the press and the media, not much happened to it. But just do breaststroke with your head above water. Just warning you. I was like, maybe you're just over exaggerating, and you're one of these lock keepers that is just a little bit precious about your space. And is it really I can't really find too much on this. And as I got down to that location, lo and behold, there was this tape, and it smelt pretty pungent. And I might have been hallucinating, but I'm pretty sure I saw some dodgy looking things floating down the river. I'm pretty sure that's just the hallucination side of things, though. But yeah, I tried to keep my head above water. But I mean, at that point in time, I was trying to push so hard that I wouldn't get out of the water to eat. The only time I would was to get to a lock, run across it, straight back in the water, and carry on. Because I was trying to do it in a decent, fast time. And I was just, to be honest with you, I was also just over it. I just wanted to get out. I just wanted it to be done. And so I would eat my food, like we'd get, pizzas. I had somebody on a paddleboard who was supporting that, and they would organize to get food, and we'd have these, protein bars and all sorts of stuff, and I would eat on the go. And so even through that section, I was literally eating food on the go, which means that it's like salmonella. I mean, you touch one thing, you've touched everything, and it's this stuff, the shit is everywhere. You can't see it, but it's there. And, I think it was less than a day later, I started getting these stomach cramps, and then it turned into chronic stomach cramps. And then I was doubled over in the water. I couldn't even swim. I couldn't take a single stroke. I was struggling to get to the side of the river in time to be able to go and shit myself. And it was the point that you start shitting yourself inside your wetsuit, that you have to peel it off in the river. I'm sorry, guys. I hope you're having their dinner. It's not really feminine, but I'm just going to tell. And you wash it away, and then you put it back on, right? And at that point, it was kind of like, okay, maybe I need to take a couple of days out here. And I'd also heard a lot of talk about Weil's disease, and that stagnant water on the side of the river. And if you get nailed by that, it's actually longer term issues than you would hope for. And so yeah, I got chronically ill, and I took some time off, a couple of days, and when I was better, I got back in the river. But it's it looks idyllic from the banks, but
I like the fact that they put tape in the water as if that was going to keep the jobbies inside the tape. Like, are they aware of how water works? Like, yeah, it's going to stay all inside that tape in the water. Jobbies don't go past that. Like,
I know. That was exactly the first thing that I said was, I'm like, really? I mean, this stuff dissipates. You know what dissipating means, right? You've heard of that before. Like, it doesn't stay there just because you put tape up. Like,
it's also funny. One of the things that I've explained to people before who want to, friends who really want to try some open water swimming, just because you're talking about shitting yourself in the wetsuit. And one of the funniest things to get explained is, okay, one of the first things you're going to have to understand is you will have to pee yourself in your wetsuit.
Yes.
So practice it, because you're kind of be going, oh, okay, go again. And it's a really weird sensation. Yeah.
You can't afford that. You just got to keep going.
Just do it. And it's a hard thing to do.
What I say to people, you know what? See it as a positive. There's a silver lining to everything. And when you pee yourself in your wetsuit and it's cold water, it's lovely.
It warms up 100%.
It's horrible, but it's lovely.
Yeah,
Nice.
we used to do it regular when I surfed regularly in the winter in Scotland. The funniest time I ever saw it was we'd been on like a 5-day surf trip and had pretty much lived in our wetsuits. And as you said, Ness, you have to just wash them in the sea, and they do start to get a bit whiffy. But we decided at the end of the trip we would go for like a proper sit down meal. And my pal Stu was sat opposite me at the table, and I saw him laughing, and he went ha, and then he went like that. And he went, I've got that used to just pissing when I needed to. I nearly actually pissed myself here. Because for so long, as you said, you're just like, and I'm swimming and peeing, I don't mind. And he literally was obviously thinking, he's had a couple of pints, I thought, I need a piss. And literally went to just go, pish, at the table and remembered it. And he just,
Oh, God.
my old panic is he nearly peed himself at the table in a restaurant.
So there you go.
Ooh.
There is nothing sexy about open water swimming.
No, this is true. This is absolutely true. You come out looking like hell, like you've been dragged behind a bus backwards, and yeah, it's very glamorous, like ablution sort of thing.
I have a video someplace of coming out of the water from the Keltman last year, and it's hilarious because you look at yourself and you think, that look ridiculous. You can't get out of the water because it's, you know, single digits temperature. And you're trying to, obviously, you're in your head, you're going, I have to get out my wetsuit really quickly, but you can't because you're trying to do it. You're fumbling, you're slipping on rocks, and you're cold. You're a little bit delusional, and you look at it, and one of my friends videoed it, and you're going, "Fucking hell, man! That's not a that's not the moment to put online. That's you look kind of ridiculous. It's horrible. Yeah, but so how long were you in the water for in total then? Because that's like, I'm talking about short stuff. You're talking about days.
I think in total it was around 2 weeks, or it might have been just because I had to take a break partway for a couple of days. I think it was maybe getting on 2.5 weeks, something like that.
It was a long time to be in water.
Scratch my memory here. I think it was around. Yeah, it was definitely just past 2 weeks.
Did you have problems because of where it was, in the river? Was there any problems like sighting to kind of keep yourself? Were you trying to stay in the centre of the river, or were you staying to the side? Is it hard to sight, or because there's obviously so many buildings? Is that a difficult thing to do?
You know what? I didn't have too much of a problem. I mean, I just the bank was there constantly, and it changed shape and form. When you get into being by the locks and by the people at the boats up there. But no, I didn't have a problem. I mean, it was just the pain in the ass of the goggles fogging up after a while, and I guess it was just. It would have been nice if it was. I mean, I wish I'd just gone to the Bahamas and done something there, so I could have seen under the water. That would be nice. It would have been clever. But no, I didn't have too much of a problem with sighting. And the other thing that I leveraged was that I had a support paddleboard with me.
Oh, okay.
And so quite often I just get bored of looking at the bank. And, I wanted to veer more into the center of the river. And at times, it's quite a broad river. And so you're quite a distance away. And so it's hard to gauge that. And so I just used the paddleboarder as my sight to guide my way.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, a little change. Yeah, one of the things I would like to say as well right now, if anybody from Red Bull is watching, is the next expedition is how luxurious can you make something for Ness?
Yeah.
How many 5-star hotels can you stay in 2 weeks?
No, I'm tired of choosing the shit. No, honestly. But you know what? That's where a lot of people kind of say to me, like, are you sane? In what you sometimes choose to go, and take on, and just the, it's not pleasant when you're doing it. It's really not pleasant. It's like doing triathlons. It's just not fucking pleasant. You feel like a hero afterwards, and you.
I don't know. I failed, so.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think that's success in itself. I mean, there's a huge amount you learn from that, and I'm pretty sure you'll tackle it again. Pretty sure.
I was supposed to be in this year, and I'm going back next year. One of the problems, and this is a ridiculous problem, is I forgot to take my padded shorts. So I did probably approaching 180 kilometers with no padded shorts on, and my bumhole was on fire. And
I think it's an understatement right there.
and I like waxy maize starch powder. You put it in water and you drink it. It's really just like a fast acting carb. And I didn't realize until when I came back that night well, you've already said it, so I could not stop shitting. And I realised that I was 18 months out of date, so I was doing the whole thing.
Oh, no.
It was getting close. I was going, oh, man, this is not, I don't feel, my bum's not feeling good. There's something wrong here. And then all hell broke loose, and that was me. I was on the toilet all night. It was amazing.
Hey, credit to you. To choose something that is 18 months out of date when your body's supposed to perform at its peak.
Well, I didn't know it was 18 months out of date. I just didn't reorganize myself.
Well, you won't make that mistake again, will you?
I will not make that mistake again. That is for certain. So, but yeah, those are it. Do you have any interest in doing something along those lines? It would probably have to be a little bit more extreme for you, I guess.
You know what? Gosh, where is it again? It's a ultra marathon through the desert.
Marathon des Sables?
Yes, that is it. For years and years and years and years, I wanted to do that. And it still eats away at the back of my mind that I would love to go through that. I don't know why, but I just really would. I think it'd be a really interesting experience. And as much as it was hugely difficult in Namibia going across the desert there in 50 degrees Celsius, there's something that I don't know what it is something wrong with my personality. Is you go through hell and you just
love it.
Addicted to it. I don't know what's wrong. There's a few screws loose and bolts flopping around in my head that aren't quite bolted on right. But I just find it fascinating. I think it's because since a very young age, I was absolutely overly interested in neuroscience and psychology. And to me, the ways that you learn a huge amount about yourself and others is to go through those kind of experiences. And I suppose for my early years of doing, the first 5 years of these kind of adventures and expeditions, especially back then they were all solo, I think I used myself as a guinea pig to better understand psychology and neuroscience and how they work. And I became addicted to that. And
I would love to see you tackle the Disablers. It's something I think in my head I go, that would be cool. I don't have that. I'm too big. I couldn't manage that at all. There's no way. Just not Scottish. You're too ginger and Scottish.
James Cracknell. I mean, he's a big rower. I mean, he's a solid bloke, and
but they're also professional athletes. I'm just a fucking idiot from Scotland. The
guy into craft beer and all that.
Yeah. Craft beer. I think that'd be amazing.
Surprise yourself.
What about do you fancy anything in there's I did look at the Disablers, and it's quite a few £1,000 to enter, and there was also one in the Arctic, an Arctic 100k or something. Yeah, that was one that I looked at, but that was insane amounts of money, like £12,000 to enter, something crazy. That looks amazing, like properly amazing.
I you know what, I think it's amazing, and I actually looked at it. I watched some documentary where they showcased that, and I thought, you know what, that would be incredible. But first, I've got Raynaud's, which is that thing I explained earlier where my body reacts, and the second thing is for £12,000, do you know what you can do? Do you know places that you can go for more than just a few days? And I just thought, I can't justify that.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
But at the same time, it's one of those things that if you did do it, it would be one of the most phenomenal memories ever.
Yeah.
It's so different, and it's not often that you get to find things that are completely wacky, off the walls different.
I definitely can't do any of that stuff. So you have to do it, and then I could claim that I've done it because I spoke to Ness once. So essentially, I've done it.
I will force you to live vicariously through it then.
Yeah, that'd be There's quite a few that these endurance events are becoming more and more popular now, and so just watching like Courtney Dauwalter and stuff, and that's one of the things that's super cool is now with people like you, Courtney Dauwalter, all these kind of really amazing athletes, is you no longer have to say she's quite good for a girl. You just got no, she's just fucking good. She's just awesome. That's
Oh,
thanks,
mate.
So it's one of those things that's really cool to be able to say, and you don't have to say it in like a kind of condescending. She's quite good for a girl.
Yeah.
She's amazing, and she would kick your ass at everything.
You know what the funny thing though is, I've learnt this is that, I'm not a fast and light person. So if you calling me an athlete is the most, in my mind, I'm like, no, that's ridiculous. You can't be. You just, that's not me. That's not me. Because when I was at school, I mean, I've got 2 left feet. I've got no sense of coordination. I was never hugely athletic whatsoever. I was so shy and introvert that I wouldn't open doors in public in case I opened the wrong way and people laughed at me. I mean, I was like the opposite of this, super confident, athletic, go out and get it person. But I realized that everyone's athletic. It's just you got to find your forte. So my forte is in a very long, arduous, harrowing, slow plod.
Yeah.
And that, because psychologically I can do that really bloody well. So I'm not coordinated. I'm not the super athlete, the superhuman kind of person in that sense. But I suppose I've trained my mind, and that's where people are like, "Oh yeah, you're a really good athlete. You're a really good athlete." And I'm like, "That's mental. That's a mental game." Which is the same, I suppose, even when you translate it to a 100-meter sprint and those top of the world, like top of their game, sub 10-second guys, is that it's mental. 80% of that is, like you can do the training, you can be consistent with what you eat, with what you train, you can be gifted in your body that you were born into, and you can push through. But if your mind's not there, you will fall flat. And I'm sure you guys have come across this in jiu-jitsu, is that if you're mentally not present and not there, it doesn't matter how fit you are, it doesn't matter how strong you are, you're going to fall apart.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, last Wednesday I was not at my best, and Ali very rarely Ali beat me up. That never happens.
No, it doesn't.
So,
it does. It's true.
And
It
Ali
doesn't.
beat me
It
up.
very rarely happens.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's
Do you
true.
ever feel-
Oh, sorry, Ali. No,
Ness, do you ever feel pressure when you're talking like that, there, Ness, that you are seen as a role model for young women and young girls? Do you ever think about that? Because, like I say, I've got an 11-year-old daughter, and I try and, as well as obviously the world of TikTok and Instagram, I try and show people like yourself, like Laura Zera that we had on, like Courtney Dauwalter, and say, do you know what? It's not just, the Kardashians. It's not just the TikTok world. There are, there's this whole other, I was going to use the word spectrum, but that doesn't fit right in this situation. It doesn't feel right. But there's a whole other angle that you can go down. Have you ever thought about that, or do you think that, or?
Oh yeah. I mean, you can't be in that world without thinking about it and being affected by it, can you? And I take very, very seriously my role as a role model, because when I was younger, I struggled. I went through a tough time at school with friends and a little bit of bullying and things like that. And, I learned a lot of compassion from that. And I was like, in South Africa, we didn't have a huge spectrum of female role models, in terms of, there were some in the sports spotlight, but it was a very male dominated world. And I just, like through those tough times that I had, I could have done with some really strong, powerful female figures. And so I take quite seriously that if I'm in the public eye, I need to do justice and do good by that. And so I try and, as best I can, go through my time on social media and in the public realms by, I suppose, to be blunt and honest, a bit, trying to be a bit of an antidote to the Kardashian stuff. And I respect them as business people, and but there's an enormous amount of pressure on young women and men equally so these days. And it's who can better the next person, and can you get the spotlight, and are you getting the likes? And it's a dangerous world to be caught up in, and it's an easy one to be in a whirlpool of. And so what I've tried to do with mine is keep it very much, you won't find me going out at the top of the mountain, clad in a bikini and, trying to sexualize anything of what I do. And so you would look at me and, in a way, what I'm trying to create is something that is just about pure passion, about a skill set, and, trying to master your knowledge and, the direction that you want to go in life, and being strong within the things that really light you on fire, that are wholesome and healthy mentally and physically, and emotionally, because it's a hard world at the moment out there for people growing up. And I don't envy the challenge that kids are up against right now. And I don't think we should underestimate the challenge that they're up against. And so that's where I think we've, I'm lucky enough to be surrounded by a community where everyone lifts each other up. I mean, you speak to Laura Zera and the likes, Kai Fano and all of those girls, and they strive to lift each other up, and they're all about real hard skills and real passion. And that is so refreshing, and I love that. And that's the world that I want to be a part of. So, hopefully I'm doing okay. I think that there's just, I always feel like I could do more. I always feel like, I need to step back and take stock of what I'm putting out there, and whether or not I'm doing justice to what I would have wanted as a kid. And sometimes that means, you look at my social media recently and you'll see that there's not a prolific amount of posts. I took a little bit of time out, and I just have the feeling that I don't want to post for the sake of it. I want to post if I have something to say. I want to post if I something that means something to me. And I'm trying, and I think that there's huge room for improvement. But as long as, we've got girls and guys who are just being utterly authentic in themselves, I think that that's what social media was born for. And I think we'll come back around to that. I think everything goes in cycles, and I do think that we'll come around to that.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think people like you are super important to the young girls. And just one of the things that, me and Ali talked about doing this was, we didn't ever want to do anything to, gain subscribers or, be controversial. Let's just do what we're doing, and hopefully if we're doing a good job, people will speak to us, and that's all you can be, because you don't want to be one of those people that, not that me and Ali are going to do a podcast in a bikini, but you don't want to say something ridiculous just to gain publicity. Ali may do it. Ali has a singlet for wrestling, so he may do it. But that's
that's episode 100 right there.
One thing, something that you don't want to see early in the morning is a 42-year-old ginger man in a wrestling singlet. But I've seen it. But yeah. So I think it's super important that you just do things for the right reasons. And I think it's. If I had to think of something, I've got on a mug one of our early superstar guests, Clint Emerson. I suppose you can call him a legendary Navy SEAL, and he's got his t-shirts and all his merch is all about the deed, not the glory, and it's a really good good phrase to use as well. You do it for the reasons that you should be doing it for, not because it's what you think you should be doing.
Absolutely. And you know what? One thing that I've realized over these years of, being in social media is that people can see absolutely right through something that's not authentic.
Yeah.
Straight away. It's as obvious as any. It's just in your face. And we know that. And yes, people still follow the stuff that's, that filtered this and that, because there's a human element that is just sucked into that, and we can't help it because we want to, be better with how we look in terms of aesthetics and this and that. But at the end of the day, I think when you speak to people one-on-one, away from the crowds and the public pressure, I think that they'll secretly say to you, well, you know what, I know what is the good stuff out there, and I know what's authentic stuff. And I think that shines through. So as long as anyone can go out there being really, really super themselves, that's gonna have an effect. And it's you might not know it, because it might not be the 10 million likes and followers and everything, but there's people following that, and they need it. and it has an effect for the better.
Yeah, I think it's you know, yeah. I can't, there's nothing I can say to add to that. You put it way better than me. You're way smarter than I am, and you're you're way smarter. And you're a better athlete and speak better English. So I can't. It does nothing for me to add to that.
Thank you. I'm not sure that's true, but thank you.
But yeah. I think we've probably taken up far too much of your time already.
I noticed my Prosecco glass was empty.
Prosecco ran out. Yeah, we're heading on towards 90 minutes. Just as we do start winding it down, Ness, we have mentioned a few times about the work that you've done. If people want to find out more about the work, your expeditions, where can they find you? And we'll tag this in the notes and add it to the video as well, so people can link in with yourself on social media or websites or whatever you want to shout out to. Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So as with most people these days, I spend most of my time on Instagram. So that's Ness_Knight on Instagram. And my website is nessknight.com. And I do need to update that. So very hold fire for a few weeks before you go there. But also, yeah, if you want to go on Twitter and Facebook, stuff gets pushed out through there. And I spend a bit of time on there. So that just search for Ness Knight and you will find it.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm excited to see updates on the farm. I'm genuinely excited.
Yeah,
to see how the farm goes.
Chaos.
So yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on those things, and I will be looking for your entry into the Marathon des Sables, and I'll be cheering you on so I can feel like I've done it myself.
Reflected glory.
So much. It's been an absolute laugh and a hoot, and I think we've got down to some quite interesting and deep topics at the same time. So yeah, it's been a good one. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ness Knight. Episode 52, Silly Goose Gang podcast, done and dusted. And that'll kick off.
The Silly Goose Gang podcast.